Carrie, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, thank you.
As you're jumping on, we do have an assignment review. So if you don't mind taking the poll questions and answering them the best that you can, I'd appreciate it.
We'll give everybody a couple more minutes here before we get going. Okay, I think we're gonna we're gonna go ahead and get started here. I know we're gonna have a bunch more that log in, but I welcome everyone to September management and leadership session. I don't know if it's been a fast summer for you, but I feel like I've blinked twice and it's come and gone. Kids are back in school and we're at least in my home, we're getting ready for another fall, another winter, and trying to figure out COVID as we go. So, like to extend a special welcome to any new supervisors that we have that are new to Orem City or new to a supervisor position that may be participating today. And we look forward to learning from you and sharing our experiences with you as well. Today, we've got, well, Carrie, do you mind going to the next slide here? Sorry.
Hey, Jason, we've
Yes.
got to do things a little bit out of order because Tom's got to go first. So
Oh,
do you
okay.
mind if we just bounce it over to Tom
Yep,
first?
let's go to Tom.
Okay. Tom, I'll stop sharing my screen so that you can start. And just as he's jumping on, we're going to talk about the new gift card system. Just so you know, as of today, as we're rolling this out, we need you to buy your gift cards through this new system that Tom is going to be showing rather than going to vendors or to the store and buying gift cards moving forward. So Tom, are you on?
Carrie, one quick follow-up question to that. What if we're doing it for a community facing, like sometimes we'll do things on social media or things like that?
So Christy, correct me if I'm wrong, but we can use a John Doe name and still be able to purchase them.
We actually would like you to enter the person's name so that we can track it.
Oh, okay.
But still, so do all gift cards, even those for the public through this system with their name?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Shirley, do you know if Tom's jumping on?
I was under the impression, but I can walk down and ask. I'll be right back.
Okay, while we're waiting, I will put my screen back up again. And we'll go to the next one, Jason.
Okay.
Oops.
Okay, so next.
How come there's no audio on mine?
Oh, there you are, Tom. Okay.
I've been here, so
Okay.
You're up, Tom.
I am. I didn't hear an introduction. Was there an introduction?
It was really good, Tom.
Oh, was it? Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure it
The
was.
best one of your life.
Okay, hold on a sec. I will move this as fast as I can because I know learning about programs is something you really want to do. So let's see. Can you see the program? Let me see. You might not. Can you see my program?
Yeah, we can see it.
All right. So I'll let Carrie. Did you introduce what this was all about?
Yeah, she did, Tom.
Serious? I didn't hear anything. My volume was up. So, okay, so here we go. Let's see. There's this. I don't know if I want to do this. I've got a flight out to LA. It was at 2 o'clock, and they canceled my flight and changed it to noon. So I've got to kind of hurry. But there was something that I wanted to say related to gift cards. This gift card program is to help us all consolidate where we're going to go when we want to give something like mall bucks or in this case corporate traditions, which I think is a great add-on tool for us at the city, because you can have an employee that doesn't know. You don't know the employee and what they like. You give them an Amazon. Do you give them a Dick's? Do you give them what card do you give them? Well, this corporate tradition that Christy found is an awesome option because it gives you an option of over 200 or more gift cards that they can choose after you give them the gift. So you don't have to specify. All you have to say is, I'm going to give them corporate traditions, or we still have the option for mall bucks, and I'll go through that. but corporate traditions is a great option for them. What theoretically is going to happen in the future is that you make the order and the employee will receive an email almost instantly of that order. But until corporate tradition creates that application interface that we need to talk to, we have to do it manually. So there may be a little delay. So when you order the gift card, actually Christy has to go online and she'll receive that order, and then Christy will have to go online and enter it manually. And then the employee will receive that email and then can choose from a list of all of those gift cards that they would that they can pick from, you know, whether it's Amazon. There's just a whole bunch. I went out there and there's just a whole bunch. Nevertheless, the method in which you enter these gift cards is pretty simple. You go in, and this program is available to all supervisors and managers in the city. It's under your APPO tab on the toolbar. You bring it up and you go into new, and it's pretty, it's pretty basic. So you click on new and you decide whether you want to give your employee mall bucks or corporate traditions. Let's go with corporate traditions. Now I'm going to go in here and give myself a mall buck or a corporate tradition. I know. No, I didn't. No. So you can see I'm not there. Well, the reason is I can't give myself a corporate tradition, darn it. And neither can you. You can't give me one either. It's just me, I'm excluded. No, that's not true. You can't give yourself a corporate tradition. So if you have that, or ball bucks. So if you have that issue, then you know. So you come in here and you say, yes,
Are
ma'am.
you typing? Because we can't see anything as what you're typing.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I am typing.
I can't see that you've hit corporate traditions or mall bucks. I can't see where the new entry. I didn't see your.
You don't see the pop-up where it says Robert Wong?
Nope.
Serious. Hold on a sec. Okay, hold on a sec. Let me stop share and then reshare it. Hold on. Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so thank you for calling that out. Okay. So as I mentioned, let me cancel this. You go into this program and you go into new, and then you choose mall bucks or corporate tradition. And then I'm going to go in here and say Phelps, as I said, but mentioned before, it doesn't come up. And that's because I can't give myself a card. But I'm going to put in here Wong, and he does show up. And then I can select him just by hitting enter, and then put in an account number that I want to give it, assign it to, and then how much I want to give him, $1. Now, I wouldn't suggest you give $1 or fractions of cents, but I'm thinking corporate tradition doesn't care. When they receive this, yeah, you can't do cents. So don't do cents. And I'll modify the program to not allow that, but nevertheless, you can't do cents. I was just told by Christy. So, and then you give the reason. And there you go. And don't blank out the email address. Now, if you are giving this to a flex employee, let's see, Abernathy. If we go in here and do Abernathy, it puts her private email on there, because right now the email system is not accommodating flex employees using city email. But once that changes, then it'll put their city email in here. Nevertheless, it puts their personal email address in there for flex employees. Otherwise, for full-time employees, it'll put their city email address. You can change it to their personal email address if you want to, but an email address does have to be in there. So if I were to if I were to hit submit, it would apply this. One thing I did want to show is if, like, you have 5 employees that you want to give something to for the same reason.
Hello, lady. How are you?
So hi, Suzanne. There we go. So for many reasons, you may want to give more than one employee the same gift card for the same reason. If you click on this checkbox, you can, if I go to hit submit, it'll hold this program open, and then I can go in here and put in, someone else.
It's Tom, it's Stephen with a V is how you spell my name.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, that's right. It's easier to go downs. Sometimes it's easier to put in a unique name and it'll come up. So, and we'll take it out of our account and we'll give him $500. So, he really deserves that. So, and then I can hit submit, and then I can do it in again for the same reason. I can do it like that and keep going, and then hit submit. Now I'm going to get rid of these, obviously. Sorry, Steve. And so that's basically it. It's really very simple. If you're sitting in a boring meeting like this one and you say, I really don't want to be here, and you don't have access to the toolbar, you happen to be at home, someone might say, is there an app for that? Well, guess what? Give me a second and I will show you something real quick and then we'll be done. Let's see. Now you know my schedule. If you type in giftcard.orem.org in a web browser, it will come up and it will fit your phone. So it will be nice and fitty for your phone. That ought to be. So you come in here and you do basically the same thing. You decide what you want, corporate traditions or mall bucks, and who you're going to issue it to. So I can start typing in Wong, hit enter, and wouldn't you know, believe me, it works. But for you know what? I think I know what went wrong. I'm probably have to log out and log back in, because it's probably saying I don't recognize you.
Hey, Tom, I tried it. It didn't work for me either.
Okay, so hold on a sec, and nevertheless, this will work. If I type in there, it did work. It was because I needed to sign out and sign back in. So Carrie, if that's the case for you, then maybe that's the reason. I will talk to our people and find out how to fix that. So I'd select him, same thing, put in the account number, whatever account number you want to put in. Now, one thing it won't allow you to do, it does limit some of the account numbers, but for Shirley's sake, put in the right account number that you think it would be right. And so I put in, and so I can put in the amounts, make sure it's a whole number. Email address is already there, and then the reason. Whatever. This is the and then submit it. And it will actually theoretically show up. Now, what will happen is right now, again, as I said, Christy will get this notification and she'll order it as soon as she can. And then the employee will get the email notification of the gift card. I see a chat up there. I'm not too sure what it is. So
Can a gift card be given to an employee outside of the department, or can you only work within your department?
Stupid me. Thank you. You can give, yes. There's one thing I did not show you. Yes, you can give a gift card to someone outside of your department. That is correct. One thing I did not show you is, if I go in here, this is a new gift card. You can do this on both the web app and this. If I go in here and say John Doe, because I'm going to give this employee, I'm going to give this individual a gift card. You can see that I typed in John Doe and it said this is a non-employee. You can still do that as long as you specify their email address down there. So you can give, if it doesn't find it in the HR master file, then it will just assume it's a non-employee. Any other questions?
Tom,
So I had a question.
you need to be aware that the reason it requires an email is because that's how they're going to get the certificate.
Right.
So what if we want to deliver it by hand? Obviously, this is saying it's delivering it by an email. We can't get in a physical card to give them?
No.
Okay, so Christy says Christy says, yes, you can. You just need to let Christy know so that she doesn't order it and it gets delivered.
But it
I
won't
would-
give them a physical gift card. It's going to give them a certificate. They go on and pick their gift card.
That's correct. Yeah, so it gives them a piece of paper and instructions on how to redeem the gift card, so to speak.
Okay.
So, and one other thing I just realized, I guess in theory, I haven't tested this, so don't do it. But I'll have the powers that be decide whether or not it's a legitimate option, and that is I could go in here and say Wong, and then put in the account number, and say, okay, I want to give them, $100, and this is a great employee. And then I could come in here, I'm thinking theoretically, and put my email address in here. And then I would get the certificate, and then I could take that certificate, print it, and give it to the employee. So that's another option.
Tom, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So the reason you type, will that show in the email they receive? In other words, will they be notified this is why you're getting it? And how many characters can we put in that reason field?
One of the things that I did do, so Christy right now has to manually enter all of these. So one of the things I did do is make it so that she could, just by entering all these fields down here at the bottom, cut and paste it into the request. I don't know if corporate tradition provides an option for a reason, but I provided that for her so that she could click in here and then just paste it into corporate traditions if they ask for a reason. I just don't know, and Christy's kind of staring, and she probably doesn't know
Yeah,
either.
we do have a bill that is very small.
Oh, so
It's
my
usually a generic, you're appreciated, or thanks from you, or.
okay, so can you hear what Christy said?
Yes.
Okay, so in testing this out, we'll see, to what extent we can move to implement this, as far as, how big. Mine is a big field. You can put pretty a lot, but I'm not too sure what corporate tradition's length is. Tammy, I know you're from the library. The library loves narratives, so we have space, but maybe not that much space. Any other questions?
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'm done. See ya.
Thanks, Tom.
I'll be on the beach in just a few minutes.
Have fun.
Very jealous.
See ya. Bye.
Okay, so moving on, we've got next month, October 7th, is our next leadership and management training. Make note, spread the word. This will be a required training. Our focus on the cybersecurity. There, as you all know, we've had an increase. We continually have an increase in risk with cybersecurity. But what we're going to do with this training is we're going to make it very, very Orem specific in how we as supervisors can help our IT department, basically what we're doing and how we as supervisors can assist in keeping Orem City safe. And so again, whether you're attending in the live session or whether you're watching the recorded version, we will be taking roll on that one. That one is required that you all as supervisors attend that. And then from there, we'll proceed to do trainings for everybody else. But as far as supervisors go, mark that on your calendar, October 7th. That one is definitely required. And then little jumping into the future there, November 4th, we'll be talking about supervisor time card responsibilities. And then Jamie has requested to discuss hiring, your most important responsibility. So put that on your calendars. And please, again, arrange your responsibilities and time frame such that you can attend these sessions. Carrie, who was going to?
This is me. Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so I just wanted to go over a couple of quick housekeeping items from my end real quickly. Flex and seasonal grades and ranges, those will go into effect September 19th, and that will be on the October 7th payday. So if you have flex and seasonal employees, this is the timeline for their new grades and ranges. I am having Scott work with the library right now to set up some meetings with them. If you have a big work group of flex or seasonal employees and you would like us to come do the presentation similar to what we did for our full-time employees, happy to do that. Just reach out to Scott and get that on our calendars. There's been a lot of concerns and questions about COVID-19, so I just wanted to quickly go over what you should be doing if you've had a direct exposure or a non-direct exposure. So let's go about talking about direct exposures first. There's two different paths, right? You've either been vaccinated or non-vaccinated. Although we are not obviously requiring for you to get vaccinated to work here at the city, we highly recommend that you do so. And you'll see why in these quarantine reasons as well, besides the fact that you lessen your likelihood of getting sick if you have the vaccination. So if you are vaccinated and you have been directly exposed means that you have been within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes or live in the same household as someone who has been tested positive for COVID-19. So those are the reasons why. So if you've been directly exposed and you've been vaccinated, you do not need to quarantine. You can if you would like to, but they recommend that you get tested 3 days after the exposure. If you do end up coming down with symptoms, that's when you would need to isolate and get tested. But if you do not have symptoms and you have been vaccinated, you do not need to quarantine. If you have not been vaccinated and you have been directly exposed, you need to quarantine for 10 days without a test or quarantine for 7 days and get the negative test result. We would like you to wait at least 3 days after the exposure to get the test, but you will need to stay home for 7 days if you're non-vaccinated. If you live with someone who has COVID-19, so they've tested positive for COVID-19 and you are not vaccinated and they live in your home, you must quarantine for 10 days, even if you get a negative test result. So that's another good reason if you're on the fence on whether or not to get vaccinated, because if you live with someone who does test positive and you are not vaccinated, you will have to quarantine for 10 days. Now let's talk about indirect exposures. There's been some confusion as what that means. For example, you might have a child who you get a phone call from the school or an email saying your child has been exposed to COVID-19 from someone in their class, so they need to quarantine. That is not a direct exposure to you. That's a direct exposure to your child, but not to you. So be very clear on that. If it's, I hear that a lot, that you have a child that has to quarantine. That does not mean that you need to quarantine. So let's go over that. If you've been vaccinated and you have been indirectly, unless you've been directly exposed, you do not need to quarantine. So for the example of this child who comes home and has to quarantine because they've been exposed at school, let's say they come down with symptoms and test positive for COVID, then you need to follow different rules. But unless you've been directly exposed, you do not need to quarantine. If the exposed person in the household tests positive, that's when you change to the direct exposure. If you're non-vaccinated and you've had an indirect exposure and you have not been directly exposed yourself, you do not need to quarantine. If the exposed person in the household does test positive for COVID-19, then you do have to follow the non-vaccinated exposure guidelines if you're not vaccinated. Any questions on COVID-19 and the requirements for isolation and quarantine that I can answer for you right now? Great, we're all experts at it then. I like it. Okay, last thing, and then I'm going to turn the time over to Jason and Mark. This is just quickly about time card approvals. We will go into this much more deeply when Shirley does her training in November, but I wanted to put this out there today. You as a supervisor are responsible for approving and assuring the accuracy of time cards for all those that you supervise. So if you are approving time cards, you need to check them and make sure that they have the correct hours worked, that the vacation and sick leave, if they've asked for time off or taken time off, make sure that that's on their time card. And just as a quick reminder that incorrect time card approvals can result in disciplinary action up to and including termination. You have this supervisory responsibility, so it's very important that you take the time and review the time cards of those that you supervise. Any questions on time card approvals? Okay, really quiet today. I'm going to jump it over to Jason. All of the housekeeping items are done and we get to have our leadership training now. Jason?
Hey, thank you, Carrie. Yeah, and I just want to take just a few minutes here to help us stretch out mentally a little bit so that we are a little more talkative. I know it's morning time. My brain doesn't usually start sparking until about 11 o'clock, but to get going here, I wanted to share with you something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and it has to do with homemade banana cream pie. Now let me share a little history here. My entire life, I've never had a traditional birthday cake, if you will, to celebrate my birthday. It was always this homemade banana cream pie. Now, this isn't just something that my mother came up with. This is actually 4 generations of this recipe handed down from one mother to the next. And absolutely love this banana cream pie. This is something that is only cooked or baked when it's a special occasion. So for Christmas, for Thanksgiving, for Father's Day, and obviously for my birthday. So these pies are very near and dear to me. And after I got married, shortly after I got married, my wife wanted to continue that tradition. So she got with my mother, and my mom passed on that recipe and tradition to my wife, and which obviously made me very happy. And my wife, being very proud of herself, wanted to make one of these banana cream pies for her family. As you all know, you often switch parents that you go to when you go to Thanksgiving dinner or whatever. And so we went to her family for Thanksgiving, and my wife brought one single banana cream pie, which got me worried because she has 8 brothers. Okay. And so I got beads of sweat on my forehead, worried that I'm not going to get a piece of this pie. And it didn't turn out so well. And so shortly thereafter, and moving forward, I asked my wife if she could make 2 banana cream pies to take to her parents' house. Now, why do you think that I would ask her to make 2 banana cream pies in that scenario? What are your thoughts?
Doubles your chances to getting a slice, right?
Yeah, well, think a little more selfish, okay?
Leftovers.
No. One pie was for her family.
Yes.
And who was the other pie?
The other pie stays at home.
There
For
you
you.
go, Steve. That was my pie. And in life and in work and what we do, there's a lot to learn about this. Stephen R. Covey talks about 2 different mentalities or mindset. There's the scarcity mentality and the abundance mentality. Scarcity, obviously, with me and my brother-in-laws and that pie, meaning the more that they get, the less that I get. Okay, and so I'm going to fight tooth and nail to get whatever I can get, and I'm gonna protect it. It's mine. Versus the abundance mentality, and we're gonna talk about that here in a second. But what he's saying is that we should never be threatened. Well, let's talk about this first. What in the workplace represents, hypothetically, the pie? What would represent the pie in the workplace?
I would assume that would be whatever resource that we're interested in, whether that's even water at the water jug, right? Or time and attention with a supervisor who makes decisions that impact my daily responsibilities.
Okay. What else?
Jason, I would think like praise for another employee for good work, feeling like, well, if somebody else is getting like the credit for that, therefore I or others aren't.
Okay, perfect.
Hey,
What else?
Jason, I'm
Yeah.
thinking the time clock every 2 hours is like sliced pie.
Okay. How meaning
Meaning that every 2 hours, as soon as the pie's gone, I'm going home.
there you go. Okay. What else we got? All good things. What about knowledge? What about skill set? How does that become a piece of the pie in the workplace?
I think, Jason, that we all want to have opportunities to have current training, and we want to offer that kind of to those around us, I think.
Okay.
I think
That's,
maybe,
oh, go ahead.
it means I don't want to share my knowledge because then someone else will have my piece of the pie.
Okay. I would hope for what Kathy said, but in reality, our nature, we tend to do what Shirley said. If I have something that I feel is unique to me, then I don't want to share it with other people, because then that somehow I'm not unique anymore. And if it's unique, then I'm a value to the organization because I'm the only one that has it. And I'm going to use Carrie as an example here. The other day, and I haven't told her this, she came into my office here and started to ask about the ARM, which is the basically the risk management certification, that she wanted to pursue getting her ARM to further diversify her knowledge and skill and ability and risk management and understanding liability and different things. And again, going back to what Shirley said, is my first initial spark in my brain was I felt threatened that because right now I'm the only one that has the ARM in the city of Orem certification. But so if Carrie gets it, then that somehow devalues me, because now I'm sharing a portion of that pie. And we tend to do that. The other things that I thought of, rather than being supportive of her efforts and her objectives and the reasons why she wanted to do that, the other things that I thought of was someone's personality, their experience, their perspective. Okay, these are all things that can represent pieces of that pie. But what Covey teaches is the abundance mentality, that what we do or what we bring to the table, as we do that with an abundance mentality, that pie actually gets bigger rather than smaller. Okay, we gain more by the skill set, the knowledge, the experience, the personality, the perspective of others, rather than isolating ourselves or protecting these little things that we feel give us unique value. So I have a question for the group, especially those supervisors who have been supervisors for a number of years. how do we, or how do you be more open and accepting of what others bring to the table? And in that, how do you yourselves be more willing to share what you have with others? So again, going back to what Kathy said, how do we, what's the word? Initiate our own willingness to act contrary to our nature when it comes to our knowledge and our skill set. What experiences do you guys have?
Hey, Jason.
Yeah.
I think one way we can do that is that we can understand our role and the role that we fulfill. You're talking about, we were talking about knowledge and how we can have a tendency as supervisors sometimes to feel threatened by others receiving knowledge. And while we're discussing that, I was thinking about the notion of onboarding, how at the same time we may feel like that, our whole goal and one of our duties as a supervisor is to prepare those underneath us to really take our position. And so even though we may feel threatened, there's an obligation there to prepare and to yield that wisdom and knowledge in those cases.
Jason, this is Chris.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I haven't been a supervisor for years. I'm probably, I think, going on 3. I can't remember. But my position isn't coveted by anybody that I know of in my office. But the thing is, as I get closer to knocking off another year, closer to retiring, I'm very willing and able to share as much knowledge as I can with anybody that might want this position at some point, because there's things that we've been doing for so many years and we know how to do it like the back of our hand, but not everybody is in my brain. And there's things that we do sometimes without even thinking about it, but people won't know how to do it unless we let them know all the ins and outs of things to make it easier when they take over. Because we've learned those easier ways of doing things that sometimes we took a longer way in the beginning, but we found a shorter way to do the same thing. You see what I'm saying? But it's in our brain, but not everybody knows that.
Well, and Chris, what's the downside to that? What happens if you hoard all of this knowledge and experience and then you retire? What happens to the city of Orem in that aspect, in that division, in that department, if we don't share those things?
Jason, I remember a conversation once with my dad years ago, and he was talking about, early in his career, he had this feeling that, like, my value to the organization is shown when, if I leave, everything goes downhill because, he must have been the linchpin in this organization. And he said it took him a while, and then he finally got to the realization that if I leave and everything goes downhill, that's what reflects poorly on me, that, hey, I didn't leave. I didn't train those behind me. I didn't build up the employee base or those that work with me in a way that they're ready to take the reins if or when I were to ever leave. And I think that's a little mind shift for many of us that we have to have, is when we're gone and something can't happen, some of us may, and all of us probably at times may think, there we go. See, I've got to be there. If things go down when I'm not there, everybody can see that I am the key to this part of this process, this organization, this whatever, where really it reflects the other way, I think, of, wow, why didn't that person train the next person in line? Why weren't they training those people so that if that were to happen, which could happen at any time, given an illness, an accident, or something else, we've got to be thinking those steps ahead. And that's what's going to make us look like good leaders, not just good employees.
Well, and exactly, Steve, even in my role as risk manager, it's not about what I myself am able to do or accomplish. It's about what influence have I had on supervisors, on individuals that then themselves learn how to manage risk and make those more productive decisions in weighing out good risk versus bad risk and how to do those things that then again gets passed on to their staff and so on and so forth.
Jason,
Yes.
I also want to say that if you care about not just your job, but if you care about the city as a whole, if we can come out of ourselves enough to realize the city as a whole and you care about the city, you will want there to be more than one person that's able to do your job. I mean, we're dealing with it right now. When you don't have someone that can step up and just immediately do the job, it's making it really difficult and harder on the people around us.
Oh, exactly. And thank you, Shirley, and thank you for everyone for sharing this. The point I'm trying to make is this training, this supervisor training, the leadership and management monthly training is in essence a potluck dinner, folks, where each of you has the ability to bring something of value to the table, regardless of your experience, regardless of your pay grade. Okay. You all bring something to the table. And we do that by, rather than just sitting and listening, which I appreciate, but in a selfish way, I want to learn from you. I become a better person. I become a better risk manager by learning from you, from your experiences, your insight, your contribution. Regardless of what you do. Some people may say, well, I've only been a supervisor for 4 days. What do I know? Believe me, everyone contributes. Everyone takes part of this. You know, we are in essence a fruit salad. Okay, we're not this blended smoothie where we all get mixed together. Okay, each one of us has unique flavors and whatever it is that we bring to the table. So with that and moving forward, I invite each of you, I desperately want to hear from you in these supervisor trainings. And so does Carrie and those that are training and participating. Just look at this again as a potluck dinner. And I want to know what I want to feast on what you're bringing to the table. So I invite you to do that. So with that, we're going to go ahead and turn the time over to Fire Chief Sanderson. He is going to wrap up his training on the culture code, which I have very much enjoyed. So Mark, we'll go ahead and turn the time over to you.
Okay, Jason, thanks. I'm just going to try to grab my screen. Can you guys see it?
I can't yet.
Yeah, not yet.
One of the things I wanted to add to, because it plays right into this culture code, Jason, on top of your presentation or your just involving us, was if you think back of the past couple of sessions, it in creating vulnerability and all these belonging cues and holding information tight and close to ourselves, it doesn't create a trusting relationship. And so it's important that we all share and participate.
We can see it now, Mark.
Okay, thank you. I'm like, where am I?
You just need to pull up your present. There we are.
I don't want to go to this start. I'm sorry that this isn't just working. So I guess I just want to thank everybody again. I know that there's been an abundance of Mark over the past couple of months with this book, but I think that it's been very beneficial. I mean, I've learned a ton, even rereading and re-listening. And so I hope that we all can take something away from this and be better for sure as leaders or just members of the organization. So this will be part 3. But in moving forward really quickly, I just want to, I'm going to do a real brief recap just in case there are individuals that haven't participated. And as you can see in part 1 of this presentation, we covered a number of bulleted items, the spaghetti marshmallow challenge, it was a process that tested a working as groups of individuals where kindergartners won the challenge over teams of business students, lawyers, and CEOs. It was an interesting study. 2, group culture is one of the most powerful forces on the planet. And I think that just this whole book, these conversations and everything we're going through are identifying that when we work together and we apply these principles, I mean, we can just about do anything. The concept of the good apples versus the bad apples, my question is for us to think about is, do you influence good, or are you the bad apple that is destructive in the work group, which we shown proves to reduce performance by 30 or 40%. And then we covered a list of consistent interactions that have been identified that help create safe connections. Safe connections create chemistry, and this chemistry is what creates the positive results. And then how to build belonging. Successful cultures are energized and engaged and focused on solving hard problems together. And I think that you think individually in our own departments, the things that we've gone through over the last 6 or 12 months, we're capable, and we do it often in dealing with hard problems. And then how we discussed how to design for belonging. And if you remember, we talked about collisions, and collisions are the key driver to creativity, community, and cohesion. And then I just love that CEO of Zappos described collisions as the lifeblood of any organization. And then we created a list of ideas for action. And if you recall, because there was an assignment put out several weeks ago, we talked about over communicate your listening skills. And then moving to part 2, same little quick recap. If you recall, tell me what you want and I'll help you. That was the July 10th, 1989 United Airlines Flight 232 from Denver to Chicago with the 285 passengers when they lost all of their hydraulics, and they pulled a pilot out of that was a passenger into the cockpit to help the crew troubleshoot and crash land the aircraft, but 185 passengers survived. And so all these little fluid conversations is what's going to contribute to the success within our organizations. And along those same lines, we talked about AARs, the after action reviews, and brain trust meetings. And then we dove right into the vulnerability loop. And that's when 2 people really are vulnerable together. And if you remember, A sends a signal, B detects it, B responds, A then detects it, and it's just this loop of communication. And the quote that I highlighted was, vulnerability is less about the sender than the receiver, but obviously we have to work very closely together. And then the super cooperators, if you guys remember Draper Kaufman's trust machine, and this was the Navy SEALs, and they really focus on their stealth and adaptability of the complex situations which they go through, the dangerous missions that they complete. And if you remember the comment that they function like a pickup basketball team, they just deal with what happens, and they're so structured and so skilled with the delivery of their service that there's very little talk. They just play the game. And then we talked about how to create cooperations in small groups. And this was the example of David Cooper, who just happens to be the best at a skill that is hard to define and which is extremely valuable. He's the best at creating great teams. He just happened to be one of the Navy SEALs leaders that everybody talked about. And then we talked about the cooperation with individuals. And this was the Harry Nyquist, who worked for Bell Laboratories. If you remember, Harry was so ordinary that he was considered nearly invisible when really he was identified as the most important person in one of the most creative places in history, and the one person that almost everyone would overlook. And so I challenged you to look into your organizations and figure out who that Nyquist was within our own departments. And then again, ideas for action. We listed a number of items that to just discuss and look at. And then a couple of them came forward with additional assignments, homework, I guess, if you will, that we over communicate our expectations, meaning we send big, clear signals that establish what your expectations are. And then another assignment that fell under this section 2 was use an AAR within your own organization. And if you remember, some of the questions in developing that are, what are our intended results? What were our actual results? What caused our results? What will we do the same next time? And then what would we do differently? So that's just a quick overview of what we've already put together. I appreciated Carrie sending out this assignment to try to involve everybody, leaders or anybody else that's involved with these questions that were put out. And I really want to just jump right into them and ask anybody who used an after action review over this past month, and did it improve the process moving forward? And if so, how? So please share if you do. And I know from the police side and the fire side, there are a couple specific examples with emergencies that we had. But in the other departments, how did you apply this principle within your group?
You know, Mark, for me, a lot of this I had to apply to my home life with my teenage daughters, my twins that are just turned 15. They just started high school. Their ninth grade year was extremely difficult for them academically. I mean, I'm sure COVID was a big part of it, but they just have zero motivation to do anything that has to do with homework. And this over communicating, one of my favorite quotes, who was it? George Bernard Shaw. He says the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. And I see that not only home with my daughters, where I think they understand, and we go our separate ways, and then come to find out they had no idea what I was talking about. And I see that in the workplace as well, that we're not taking the time to effectively over communicate, and to make sure that whether it's with a group, I can't tell you how many trainings I've attended where a section manager equivalent gives an hour-long training and feels like the training went awesome and that they got their point across, and and then I go out with the crews, and none of them even remotely wrap their brain around the concept of what was being taught. So it's become very effective for me within, like I said, with my children as well, these principles.
Thanks, Jason. I know that I don't know who's on from the fire because I can't see, but I know we had a structure fire where we actually had an AAR this last week, and I don't know if anybody on the line was involved in that, and if you are, maybe you could share that example of how we applied that principle to improving how we handle a fire next time.
Lon or Jason or Sean, do you guys know of anybody that's on the call?
I was just going to say too, also, I know that the police department did an after action review from an incident several weeks ago. I don't know if one of their participants of that review is on the line, because I know there were a lot of lessons learned that could be shared without really giving too many details that were shareable, I guess. So,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who else is, if anybody's on that was there.
okay.
So Chief, this is Jason. So both those fires were 8 platoon fires. One on Tuesday, and then the one on Tuesday hasn't had an after action yet. And then the one before that has already been reviewed, but it was all 8 platoon. And so there's a different platoon on today. So I doubt anyone from that fire is going to be on. But the fire was reviewed through an after action conducted by Battalion Chief, which was Chief Dunn. And so we've, as we've talked as a leadership group, it would be beneficial to communicate, over communicate that, I guess, a little bit easier by having it in a more centralized location, and then using a probably just a collateral leader to conduct that meeting, so we're able to, challenge and review the decisions a little bit easier in a constructive manner that will, benefit the entire organization rather than just the shift that was on and working that fire, because everybody can benefit from, the actions in the after action of that particular incident.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, because it was like I got hit upside the head with a brick when we were talking about this fire and in our leadership meeting, and it was handled on A shift. The chief running the meeting worked with his crews, the do's, the don'ts, the things they did good, the things they did bad, the things that we could do different. And it just clicked that, oh my gosh, we have 2 other platoons that, without sharing this as an organization, they run the risks of making the same mistakes, error, or missing out on the things that the other crews did very well. And so that's something that we're going to take away as a leadership group and move forward in the future, is sharing them, like Chief Earl just said, organizationally, because we just don't have that many that 20 to 30 times a year we will do an AAR. It needs to be shared amongst the entire. And also along those same lines, with the follow-up with the PD and the combined incidents that we share with them, finding a way to do after action reviews between our departments, just to assure that we're working closely together, and that we're not slowing down or getting in the way of each other, because we're there to complete the same task, and how to bring those forward in the future so that we get better collectively as public safety.
Mark?
Yeah, Chief, and I want to add, it shouldn't just be the fires, right? It should be, every incident should be after action reviewed, but especially the large ones, whether it be medical, fire, or special circumstance incident, those should be, after action reviewed with the organization in a way that we all can take something away from it, and the other departments in the city can benefit from those reviews as well, from, just varying leadership perspectives.
Yeah, thank you.
Mark, this is Bren. I was just going to say, obviously you and your team have shared some great examples that are maybe a little more formal in nature. But I find that doing a after action review, or sometimes to me, it's like, it's the meeting after the meeting, or the follow-up after the meeting. And in addition to the ways that it helps that you're talking about in terms of communicating and getting everyone on the same page, and then finding ways to improve and do things better next time. In addition to that, I think it helps clarify intent. Sometimes things can get misinterpreted. I probably even often things get misinterpreted, whether it's body language or the way that I've said something isn't clear or isn't resonating. And so having that additional, review of the projects or assignments that are discussed in the meeting, I found it to be helpful to just clarify and make extra sure that everyone is on the same page and nothing was misinterpreted.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, Brandon, especially outside of public safety where our incidents are very structured and we have a game plan and we just follow an algorithm a lot of times, where you get into a council meeting or you get into an executive staff meeting, and your point's exactly right. We have the ability to follow up as a group just to assure intent and the things that were said, and then how to game plan for the next meeting. So thanks for sharing that.
Hey, Mark, Tara put in the chat that she doesn't have a microphone, but she always appreciates the debrief after we have a major police incident. We're able to express what we thought went well, what we can improve on, and we always get some good suggestions about how to handle it better or even way to go when we've handled it well. I feel like we are having those types of incidents more often, and we're getting better at them in part because of the discussions afterwards.
Oh yeah, thanks, Tara. That was good.
Hey, Mark, this is Stephen. One thing I think too, and this is hard for all of us, I think, because it's natural, is I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, who does this review happen with? Because sometimes when we have some kind of a issue or conflict, the natural thing is to go to a confidant who's going to make us feel better about whatever it was that we did. And essentially, we almost kind of seeking another person to say, hey, could you agree with me? The other person was an idiot, right? I mean, it wasn't me, it was the other person. And if our review continues to be with people that will never be honest with us and never be open with us, then really we're not going to get any better in our interactions, in our conflict or processes or whatever it is that we're trying to improve. And I think the other thing too is as we go into have that review, I think we set the tone of, again, I'm thinking of it's an issue related to myself, and this could apply to anybody, but go in saying, listen, I'm not looking for somebody to just reassure me that I did the right. I'm looking for somebody that will be honest with me about how I could have been better in this or how I could have been better in that. But I think so often we kind of enjoy you go to somebody that's going to make you feel good about whatever you did. You're going to walk away feeling like, okay, I'm validated. I wasn't the problem here. Somebody else was the problem. And all of that doesn't lead anything like to any better place for anybody. So we've got to be, in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, I've got to be one, open about my intent is to improve myself, not just somebody else. And two, whoever is on my review committee of something that I've done can't just be confidants that are just going to validate me. They've got to be people that will be honest with me about things I could do better.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you just hammered all of the points that were brought out when we discussed AARs, that they are uncomfortable and they are heated and feelings get hurt, people cry, people yell, doors get slammed. And that's why it's so important as an organization that we have the trust within each other, and that we can hammer it out, yell it out, cry it out, hug it out, and then move on, because it's hopefully never personal. It's always professional. And that's why for me, it's easy. I shouldn't say easy, easier to have really hard, critical conversations, because I truly am not making it personal. It's very professional, and I want to see something different. Or in turn, I've been corrected multiple times or challenged in our leadership groups to approach things differently. And yeah, sometimes they're hard to hear because it's just how we're made up. But if bad leaders don't take that advice from these reviews, regardless of it's formal or just a conversation between two of us, and do something positive with it. How about examples of how you were different in listening? I know that every single one of we've had a meeting this month. Was there anything particular or anything specific that you actually had to focus on to do different reading into this assignment? After reading the assignment, what are great listeners made of?
Mark, this is one that I actually did with my two oldest teenagers this last month. So I guess like Jason, I'm trying to apply it to be not only a better leader, but a better dad. So I've got a daughter that's 17 that's driving, and a son that's 15 that is doing his driver's permit, and they both got into fender benders this last month. And Kenna, if you're on, you'll be proud of me. I thought of being a better listener and of everyday strong parenting tips, and basically the main thing was just taking the time to understand better, ask, make sure that the person I'm talking to knows that I care about them more first and foremost, and that together, sort of a reassurance that together we can, overcome the situation, come up with solutions, make lemonade out of it, and learn from it and do better next time. So it was really, avoiding that initial kind of knee-jerk reaction of frustration and just taking a pause, hearing it all through, ask clarifying questions, and then get to talking about solutions then quicker.
Yeah, Brent, I think that's a principle that all of us could do better at. I mean, even I, in our leadership meeting, because I've always got something to say, you guys all know that, and I have an opinion. Just in one of our discussions, I actually had to take a pause myself and just think before I spoke so that I came across the right way and delivered the right message. So it was understood and clear. So in my attempt to be a really good listener, that's exactly what I had to do, is not just knee jerk and respond, but actually hear what was being said and then apply it with my reply. And I think it helped me. I'm trying to be different. Especially in exec staff. That's the perfect example, because how many times do I interrupt before the person's finished? I just need to take a deep breath before I talk, because usually they'll finish their thought and I've interrupted them. And so that's one of the things I worked on, was taking a breath before I speak. And I found that I interrupted less.
Mark, and this wasn't recent. This is actually a little while ago, but I learned a very important lesson about being an effective listener. It was this employee is no longer here, but it was over a very minor injury that it progressed a little bit, and then for whatever reason, we had to take it kind of a different direction. And so I was on the phone with this employee and told this person that we needed to go a different direction. And I had known this employee, I was friends with this employee, and all of a sudden they just go from 0 to 100, just upset, angry, very, very emotional, very out of character. And I sat there, I listened, I allowed them to get out whatever they felt they needed to get out. And it very quickly, in my mind, I knew that we weren't talking about the injury. Something else was the underlining problem. And I was able to, once they were done, I said, let's not talk about the injury right now. I said, I want to talk about you. What's going on? And then they opened up. Come to find out, they had a family member that was just diagnosed with cancer, and among other issues with the family. And so, I don't know, there's a lot to be learned from that, in the sense of, from a manager's perspective, about, again, all the visual cues and things and body language and those types of things. But it also, in my opinion, comes down to to understanding your staff, understanding personalities. You know, we work with each other every day, and we know when something's off. And I think by putting little pins in those things and understanding, it makes us better listeners when those events do actually happen.
Thanks, Jason. From the assignment Carrie put out, if anybody read, hopefully everybody read what great listeners actually do. A couple of things that I documented or wrote down was good listening is much more than being silent while the other person talks. Good listening includes interactions that build a person's self-esteem. Good listening was seen as cooperative conversation. And the other one was good listeners tend to make suggestions, which I just sometimes gets me in trouble at home. You guys are helping your kids. I'm trying to help my wife. She doesn't want suggestions. She just wants to talk. And so when I offer suggestions, I can't apply that last principle as a good listener for me, because maybe the sender isn't looking for suggestions. And so to your point, it's just, Jason, really understanding what's happening. Over communicating. Did anybody have an opportunity to over communicate effectively this past month? Because I know that I need to be, it's kind of funny because as much as I talk, I've always thought I was a good communicator. Reading through this final chapter 3, and we'll address it when we get into the section itself, but it talks about being 10 times as clear about your priorities as you think you should be. So in our conversations as leaders, when we're outlining priorities and things we want done, the book talks about when the author was asking these successful organizations questions regarding just the whole process of the interview in the book, when asked, only 2% of employees could name the organization's priorities. And suggested leaders are inherently biased to presume that everyone in the group sees things as they do, when in fact they do not. And I 100% learned that this week, just within our own organization. We're doing really good things and we work really good together and we communicate well. However, I learned that I need to 10 times communicate something that is a priority of mine, because 1, 2, 3 times, maybe everybody doesn't understand it. And so that was my takeaway after reading the how to over communicate effectively. I wish I had read it before I had the meeting, because maybe it would have been different, but the information had already gone out. The expectation I thought was already set. And this book and this chapter and leading the discussion is helping me be a better leader, because I just realized that don't assume everybody thinks like you think, and communicate 10 times better. And so,
Mark, one of the thoughts I had as I was reading that, specifically that article of how to over communicate effectively, was, I mean, we've heard this a lot, like, right? There's the idea that we don't communicate as well as we should as an organization, which is true. And articles like this obviously drill home the point of, nor does anybody else in this world. And that's why it's this huge ongoing conversation. But, you know, sometimes I honestly painted a picture, because I've been in meetings like this where, in an attempt to communicate better, because we hear that people want more communication, we start going through all the gory details of a decision and all that. And then people do kind of check out and get bored. And we as leaders think, well, I thought they wanted me to communicate better. And apparently they don't. They just say that because everybody says, you know, communicate better. Yeah. And what this article drove home is yes, communicate better, but it's about it's not that they want all the details and that's just it's almost an easy way out of, well, I can just tell you the same thing with more details. What they really want is over communicating of the big things, the vision, the mission, the, goals. And we often just go to the details because that's almost the easy way out of, I'll tell you the same thing just with more details, as opposed to really being intentional about what is it we're communicating. And in this, the phrase here, what is it that we're over communicating? Hope that makes sense.
Well, it does. And that it's just is the perfect example that I provided was I was in the details and in the weeds, which met the objective of our priority, but we haven't really identified the priorities as well as it should be. And so, yeah, thanks for sharing that. From this reading, how to over communicate effectively, the things that I pulled out of it or outlined was 1, keep it simple. 2, hold short, frequent check-ins. 3, make one-on-ones relaxed. 4, mix up your modes of communication. And for me, it's talk quiet, then I'm screaming, then I'm yelling. I haven't cried yet, but that's on hold. We'll see. 5, don't wait on news, good or bad. And that's the one thing that, yeah, we're very quick and fast to want to deliver Jamie just gave us all raises, council supporting it, all the good news. Bad news, yeah, we, for whatever reason, want to drag our feet and prolong the agony when really to over communicate and be effective, you got to get the bad news out as quickly as the good news. And then the conclusion, expect the unexpected and just be prepared because you never know what you're going to hear. But if you don't over communicate effectively, we're not going to be good communicators.
Hey, Mark, do you mind if I just say something about that? You were talking about those five reasons. And the one that hit home to me the most was don't wait on the news, good or bad. I think sometimes we want to have a conclusion to a situation before we update our teams. And I think that shows that we don't trust our teams or that we don't feel like we need to communicate with them until the issue is resolved. And I think giving them information as you're working through a big problem or an issue as the next steps or what it is that you have figured out so far when you're in the situation, it helps them understand your reasoning behind when you get to the conclusion, why you did get to the conclusion that you did, because they've been involved from the beginning to the end with your communication.
Yeah, thank you. And you're sharing the poll results. You want to go through those? We'll see how well I've communicated over the past 3 months based on everyone's answers.
Yeah, let's do it. So the first question was how many levels of listening are there? And that was directly from the assignment, the reading assignment, and that is 6 levels. So the majority of you got that right. So good job. The second question, a good listener is like I'm glad no one said slide. That was good. The answer is trampoline on that one. So most of you got that one correct. With the book we've been studying the last 3 months, 100% of us got that right. Good job, Culture Code. I still do have 3 extra books left. So if you haven't had an opportunity to get the book yet and you'd still like to read it, I've got 3 more. So just reach out to me. Successful over communication that's number 4, prioritizing and delivering the right communication at the right time. Good job, 100% got that. And communication is a 2-way street. One person selected dead end. Why don't you reach out to me after the meeting and we can have a discussion about that, but everybody else got that one right, good job. And what's an AAR? That's an after action review, 86% got that right. And then the final question, number 7, what's our employee motto? Looks like we've done a great job over communicating that. All of us got that correct, and that's building a better Orem.
Awesome. I'm curious on the dead end because we've all had conversations where, holy crap, that was a dead end. Well, let's jump into part 3. You can see there's 5 sections, significantly less material, pages to read than the previous 2 sections. But these are the things we'll cover. 311 words. The hooligans and the surgeons, how to lead for proficiency, how to lead for creativity, and ideas for action. So the first question I want to ask really quickly is purpose. What is purpose? What is the role you play in achieving our purpose in your leadership role? What's the definition of purpose? Somebody Google it really fast.
Mark, I just say like the reason you exist, the reason you do what you do, or the reason you exist.
Yeah. And then in your current position, I mean, Stephen, what's your purpose? What happens if you don't come to work anymore, which really I feel like then defines the purpose of your role, your position. So what is that?
I feel like it's in some ways evolved over the years. When I first started, I didn't have anybody that I oversaw. I worked on projects. So I always felt like the reason I exist is to make life better for Orem citizens or for Orem residents. Mm-hmm. And while I still feel some of that, as I've started to work more with people, I realize I interact a lot more with employees than I do with citizens. And if my purpose is all about making life better for the citizens, well, what about the people that I interact with far more than the citizens? And so I've kind of like, I have this little motto I've created for myself that I have, which is I want to create places where people connect. And that's in the community for citizens, but it's also in the workplace for employees. But I just want people connecting in any place that I am working to build.
Yeah, your purpose, your position, your role you play definitely makes a difference. I mean, anyone else? What happens? What happens if you, as a leader or as an employee, don't exist? If you can't define your purpose, then you need to talk to your leader because you have one, guaranteed. I mean, I think the city is well managed from a FTE perspective where we don't have employees just running around that without them, things fall apart. I feel like each one of us in our roles play critical roles or critical purposes that make a difference. Anybody specific with some efficiencies you'd lose in your department based on your not being involved or lack of purpose?
Mark, this is Lena. So I guess since I took over training in dispatch, we kind of, you work with us, we have a unique environment, unlike any other department in the city. So I think as the training coordinator, really, I shape the future of how we move forward in our training and how we train new dispatchers. And, before Jason was talking about just like passing our knowledge on, I feel like that's always been something that's been important to me, is that to make sure that what I've learned through my dispatching and through my fire and paramedic background is passed on to the young ones who come into our center, who are going to be the future.
Yeah, thanks, Lena. I really appreciate that. And you can just step back and look at the role you're playing and the purpose you're here and what you're providing for dispatch and public safety. It's pretty important. Things don't get completed if you don't complete your role. Anyone else have any comments before we move on to the next section. This is the 311 words. And if you remember reading through the book, it really revolves around Johnson & Johnson and their credo. Their credo is made up of 311 words. It was written in 1943 by Robert Wood, who at the time was the chairman and a member of their founding family. And over time, like any place, they end up just being words. And what ended up happening in 1975 with the current president at the time, he just realized that this credo, which they've been living by, just it didn't feel important. So he gathered up 35 top managers in the organization, which you think Johnson & Johnson's a huge company, and really just to discuss this credo. What is it? Should we change it? And they had a lot of open meetings, and reading through the book, they just talked about the feelings about it, and they didn't change it. And it's crazy because they still haven't changed it today, because I pulled it up and reviewed it. But if you read through that first section that I've typed up there, I mean, really, it's like 4 paragraphs of that same kind of verbiage. And then in 1982, I hope, well, there's a whole bunch of you that probably don't remember this, but I was younger. Oh my gosh. Age 1982. But it seems like this Tylenol and cyanide contamination wasn't that long ago, but it was. It killed several people in Chicago and basically took Johnson & Johnson from one of the leading companies in the country to rock bottom. Like, who's going to buy another bottle of Tylenol in the world? Nobody. I guess this is where the credo and living by your words really played a part for their organization, because I thought it was fascinating that they had to make hundreds of decisions on the fly. And the benefit to Johnson & Johnson company as of today is that back in 1982, every single decision that was made was based on their credo. And what they ended up doing was pulling every bottle of Tylenol off the shelves, 31 million bottles to be exact. It was actually worldwide, and offered to replace the products free of charge. And can you imagine being a stockholder back in those days, and you just watched all of your profits plummet because this decision, and we're talking 7 people worldwide, it just wouldn't be an issue. But based on their credo, that their first responsibility is, you can see, to patients, they pulled every bottle that cost them $100 million. And what I took from it, because I actually did some more research just outside of the book based on this and this decision, but it's the only thing that kept them alive, because they bounced back so quickly that it shocked everybody. People remember those times. I mean, I don't want to age you, but what was the feeling, if you remember, or do you even remember feeling it? I'd kind of spaced it completely off until I read the book. Then, of course, you remember, but it wasn't something that was on the forefront of my brain, even in the medical side and dealing with medications. I mean, it had gone away because this company lived by their credo, made decisions by their credo. And I guess the question I pose is, in your department, what drives your decision making? I mean, are you as individual leaders consistent? Do you have an overarching credo or some verbiage that you follow consistently that would have this kind of an impact on decisions we make?
So Mark, from my team, I don't know that we officially have called this before, but we've talked about it many times. Our role in human resources, we feel very strongly as a team, is to be the bridge. So we're the bridge between what's best for the city as an organization and what's best for employees, and we're the bridge in between two. So that's how we try and make decisions in our team, is try to be the bridge, to be what's best for the organization and what's best for the employees. So that's how we make our decisions with our team.
That's cool. Catchy little phrase, the bridge. Everybody in your department knows what that means, what you just talked about. And now moving forward, it'll be interesting because now you need to put a sign up in there that says we're the bridge. What about other departments? Any examples like that? Because
I'll also note, Mark, that credo by HR, it shows that they believe and even know that abundance is real, right? It doesn't have to be an either or. We can always find an and, not a but. There's enough solutions out there and the ability to work together that we can find ways for city and employees and jointly find win-wins and do what's best for all of us.
I agree. Thank you. The library's got to have some kind of credo.
I'm from the library. I was just going to get on. So I work in the acquisitions department. We're a very small team, but several years ago, I took from Jason Adamson the 7 Habits course, and felt really prompted for our team to come up with a mission statement, which we did as a team. We spent several months deciding exactly what our mission was and what we wanted to say and what we wanted to accomplish in our area. And we wrote it all up, and I got it on a big poster that is posted in our area. And it is something that we do live by here in acquisitions.
That's awesome. Is there a word, a phrase? Is there a way to sum up a mission statement?
Yeah, kind of. We have a paragraph and then we have some qualifying statements, but at the top it says STAT, and it stands for service, timely, accurate, and teamwork.
Yeah, that's awesome. STAT, that will stick, and STAT can be applied in all of our organizations, just with placing different words below it. So thanks for sharing.
Mark, this is Shar. I was wondering if I could just ask your opinion on kind of a trend that we have been seeing over the years, and particularly a strong trend with COVID. I feel like we're all in the customer service business, and we as an organization have been very focused on customer service, and we have in the past and continue to always reach a point where people who feel like we don't agree with their standpoint feel like they haven't been heard, when in fact we do hear you. We have listened carefully, we have processed the information you shared, but it's not something that we can go forward with because either community good or restraints or restrictions. And how do you kind of validate the experience when you're working with someone who really, really, really feels passionately and wants to be heard, but the end of the communication negotiation is, I've heard you, I've considered your side, I just can't acquiesce to what you want or believe you need. How do we kind of navigate that in a customer service world?
Well, I mean, hopefully everybody's considering and can provide from your own departments, because we deal with individuals on such different circumstances and different bases. But ultimately, I mean, when we're respectful and we over communicate and we listen, there's going to be circumstances and situations where we're never coming together and we'll never agree. And in those circumstances, I think are the most important, to your point, is we just part ways, hearing and understanding each other and just agreeing to disagree because for whatever reason, policy, procedure, we just can't step in line. And each one of us as leaders, you think about it, not only with the citizens, but even with your own employees, we got to come up with a way that we communicate that to where they feel heard, they feel valued, and we are able to articulate the reasons why it just can't do it.
Definitely feel like that's something that we all need to work on within ourselves, within our groups, and even, with our own families and kids, to help us all understand that you have a valid point, but it's not always something that we can accommodate.
Char, that was the thing that was this specific this is the specific thing I was thinking about when I was reading the article about becoming a better listener, was this idea of, in the instance where, which has happened, we've talked it out, we just agree, we just don't see eye to eye on the solution. I've thought about to myself, like, did I really listen the way that they kind of represent we should, these six steps of listening? Did I really, and this is introspective for me, I'm not casting this on anybody else. Did I really listen that way, where I was asking kind of questions of understanding and really engaging in the conversation, not just sitting back, allowing them to tell their side and then digesting it in my mind and making a decision? I just thought, are those instances, could they be less if I was far more of an engaged listener than I am at times? Even when I'm hearing what they're saying, I'm just not really engaging in a way that they would maybe think I'm really listening and understanding what they're saying, even in the end when I might disagree. And if I did that better, would the feeling of, you don't agree with me, you weren't listening, would those instances be lessened? I don't know.
Stephen, I agree. And it's interesting because I think any one of us that want to be better communicator through over communicating or listening, because again, I just went through this with the same circumstances, is I heard them, I made a decision, move in a direction, but I had to listen with more intent to what the leadership group was actually saying and put some value to their words and to their assumptions and feelings. And I had to walk back the direction I was going and provide more time to meet our objective and to meet our expectations, where had I maybe having not gone through this 3 months and reading this book and these kind of conversations, I may have not been so quickly to walk it back. I may have held my ground, but I feel like just within our group this last couple of weeks, I took a different stance and was a better listener, which probably in the long run ended up the best from where I was headed. Anybody else? Credo, come up with a thing that each one of the members in your apartment, come up with a word, saying something that will stick and have meaning and have value, and that you guys make your decisions by. I think that will strengthen individual departments and overall just our organization as a whole. So this was a fun section. I hope you enjoyed reading about the hooligans, and then I obviously took more. I appreciated the surgeon side a little more, just because I feel like I'm more medical based than playing soccer. The only time I ever played soccer, I kicked the ball and I swear I broke my big toe, and I said I'm never playing this game again because I didn't know how to kick a ball interesting enough. But this hooligans, when you understand it, and I guess we've all seen soccer fans. They're just a bunch of crazy people running around painted, no shirts, whatever. But in 2004, Portugal, the book says, was about to get wrecked. They were expecting hundreds of thousands of soccer fans to attend the European Championships. But there was just one problem, and they identified these English soccer hooligans, where 4 years prior, the soccer tournament was held in Belgium. And for law enforcement, it was a huge deal. I mean, they'd spent millions of dollars in training their forces, providing them equipment. I mean, the very best anti-riot equipment, surveillance cameras, information systems, just in preparation for the soccer tournament. And there's no question Belgium was ready for these hooligans to show up because, I mean, they basically just ran the streets, smashed shop windows, beat up bystanders, fought with the cops. And 4 years prior, in that incident in Belgium, they said that more than 1,000 English supporters were arrested. And tournament organizers actually considered banning the English team from the tournament. So here Portugal's looking at the past thinking, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? They're going to destroy our tournament, our country. And it talks about the Portuguese government spending $21 million on riot control tools. I mean, water cannons, pepper spray, police dogs. I mean, I can't even, well, I think Chief Adams would take $21 million and do some really good stuff with it if we were expecting this kind of influx in hooligans. I just can't imagine that here in Orem or even in the States being so crazy. But they tried to figure out or look at different options rather than just going hands-on with all these people, arresting 1,000 people. How can we do it different? How can we be different? And so they tapped into this social psychologist, Clifford Stott. He was out of the Liverpool University, and he was working on a theory in which he thought it was possible to stop crowd violence by changing the signals the police were transmitting. And it'll be interesting to have a couple of the officers just weigh in on, because in introducing this philosophy or this theory, I mean, of course the cops are going to push back. If you're going to tell any of us how to do a job completely different than what we've been doing it, getting the buy-in to actually perform would be difficult, to say the least. But what this theory basically took was based off of one rule that they keep all riot gear out of sight. No helmeted cops, no armored vehicles, no riot shields, no batons. They basically took a group of police officers. They titled them liaison officers. They changed their uniform from that bright yellow traditional vest, put them in light blue vests. And really, this core group was selected from within the department based on their social skills, the friendliness, their ability to banter back and forth. And this group studied the team's culture. They studied soccer. They studied field strategies. They looked into team gossip. So they have the ability, when this influx of hooligans show up, to be able to just make small talk. And the local press, this is exactly what would happen here for sure, was they termed this program Hug a Thug, which is kind of funny. They identified this sending social cues, this acting differently. It worked because they identified they only arrested one English fan over the course of the 3-week tournament. And they documented 2,000 crowd/police interactions, and only 0.4% qualified as disorderly. And so the way they applied those principles and interacting with the hooligans, what it did was it just created this environment where they didn't challenge them. And ultimately, if in reading the section, you found that one jerk cop, one bad cop got into the mix in this area, and the hooligans actually called out for the liaison officers to come deal with the police officer who was out of line. And so basically the comment was, it was now the hooligans policing the police. And I mean, a social experiment that absolutely could have gone so wrong. I mean, officers could have been injured. They didn't have the proper equipment, but I think the point is each one of us interacting with hooligans, because we all have them in maybe not this capacity, but difficult customers. Can we change our tactic? What is it that we could possibly do within our own departments that would make it so that it wasn't a challenging environment, that we could communicate differently, that we were showing we were here to help, even when we disagree? You guys have any thoughts?
Mark, one of the things that just came to mind as you were asking that question was, like, during some conversations, like, on whose turf do we have the conversation? Because so often we invite them into our office to have the conversation. And I would imagine sometimes maybe that feels a little more threatening and intimidating than going to meet them where they are, kind of in their office, in their comfortable setting, not in ours.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with that. That changes the dynamic right now. I mean, if Jamie's frustrated and upset with me, if he comes over to my office, you or Bren, you have a fire department issue, you come to my office, it's way different than me being called to the principal's office. It sets a different tone. And so you're exactly right. Communicate better.
Mark, I have an example to refer to. So we went through a really big public process with our Hillcrest Park and trying to come up with kind of a general framework of what we wanted to put there. And it quickly became apparent that we weren't going to be able to meet all of the requests or even demands of, some of the people in the local or the immediately adjacent neighborhood versus, what people wanted elsewhere in the city versus maybe what some on the council wanted versus even what some of what we were hearing from our consultants. And so I knew, at least in order to keep kind of the project going and at least to continue to make progress, that everyone wasn't going to agree, at least quickly. And so really kind of the motto that sort of came to me as I'm going through that was essentially just kind of stating throughout multiple times that, okay, we're not going to be able to make everyone happy. We're not going to give everyone exactly what they want. But I said, but we'll be able to make everyone happier. Or in other words, we're not going to achieve perfection, but we are going to make progress. And then kind of going along with that, I think also maintaining a willingness to stay open and keep the line of communications moving into the future. So we don't necessarily have to say, look, this is the only solution forever. Let's make progress now and, try to address to the extent that we can, for example, all the feedback or input or complaints that we're getting, and be open to, in the future, it's something that we can continue to make progress on or look into again, or find a different, in the case of parks, find a different park elsewhere in the city where we could, add X, Y, and Z feature. So it's those two things: progress over perfection, and then don't become closed-minded forever about the given subject either. Try to stay open into future opportunities to resolve it sometime down the road.
Thanks, Bren. I'm going to just briefly talk about this surgeon procedure because I think it really can apply to us. There was a new cardiothoracic surgery procedure that was taking place. They got 16 teams together. I mean, highly experienced. One of the teams, team number one, basically had a surgeon, developed his team with department heads that had performed this type of procedure, helped invent this procedure, and had done it like 60 times, the book said. Then you look at another team too, who it's a rural-based hospital, very little experience, not involved in the process, and it's this learning experience to see based on the team dynamic, who's going to learn the quickest, be the most efficient, be the most effective. And I mean, there's no question you could think you're going to take your experience, your expertise, and they're always going to be the best. But the roadblocks that brings proves through this little experiment that the least experienced, the individuals with the least amount of knowledge actually performed better because they were in it for the learning experience. And I think the takeaway message for me reading this surgeons is when we roll something out to our organizations as leaders, as training, we all do training in our own areas. How are our employees receiving that? Is it just like, oh my gosh, another thing to do, because they already feel like they've reached that level, they don't need to continue to train or get better? Or do they take that as a learning opportunity like this group 2 surgeons and take it and excel and grow and get better? So we got to come up with ways within our departments to make sure that our employees are receiving that information the right way and applying it and taking these learning opportunities and doing something positive with it rather than it being just, I had a whole, I mean, we're running out of time, which actually surprised me, but read through that because it's from a leadership perspective, these sections, they have a lot of really good takeaway points that I think will help us build and grow in the future. The next part was how to lead for proficiency. And I just took this Shake Shack. The examples in the book are in New York City. It talks about 1,000 restaurants a year are opened. And 5 years later, 800 of those 1,000 no longer even exist. And they use this example of a business owner, Danny Meyer, that basically, I'm trying to think the exact number of restaurants, like 85 or 100 of his restaurants. I mean, it's just an unbelievable number of his specific restaurants have stayed open. Matter of fact, all of them except one, if I recall. And this Shake Shack, just one of his businesses is worth $1.5 billion. And it talks about in this section, all the things that he does, which really focuses on the employee's interaction with the customer. And the proficiency lies in the tasks being performed and really doing them to an expert level. They do them well. And little things that make the customer feel like they're at home. They remember birthdays and anniversaries and where customers want to sit and do little things. And I documented this one just to share is that a waiter overhears a guy complaining about the cost in New York City and the cost of the restaurant and from the menu. And he specifically talks about this $42 glass of wine. And within a minute, the waiter returns with the bottle of wine. So if it's $42 a glass, you know that bottle is expensive. And he offers to share 3 glasses with everybody at that table at no cost. Those are the kind of things that this business owner has brought into his successful restaurants that making a difference. obviously financially for him, but why customers continue to go back. And so what are the little things that we can do different? And we're not restaurant, but we're still customer service based. People in a lot of cases they don't have a choice to use our services because it's just the way we're set up. But we got to come up with these ways of making them feel like they're home or that we're working for them. I don't know if anybody has to weigh in on that. I just identified one thing, that proficiency is being excellent at all the tasks of the job or responsibilities that we do. Break in if anybody has anything. I'm just going to keep going. But how to lead by creativity. This is, Pixar is one of the examples they use. The thing that I love they talk about is the creativity. This is another dimension of leadership where we're not planning to go from A to B. It's a leadership process where we want to navigate to an unknown destination X. And yeah, it talks about their leader specifically, Ed Catmull. He's not that creative leader. They talk about them being an artist, but what he's done, and I called these from the book Edisms, which I think if we applied these type of Edisms into ours, we have creative leaders in our organization, but recognizing the value of each of our employees to the point where we focus on hiring people that are smarter than we are. Fail early, fail often. Listen to everyone's ideas. Face toward the problems. B-level work is bad for your soul, and it's more important to invest in good people than in good ideas. I think that's why this is just a quick example of why Pixar is so successful with their creativity, because their leader doesn't get involved in creating the ideas because he recognizes that's not he lets the people that are creative come up with the ideas. I thought it was really cool. And this last section, which I think we need to have another assignment, and I don't know who is going to be leading Carrie in the next few months, but I think some of these actions, and especially this is where it really hit home for me. I got up early this morning and I spent a lot of time just on this very last slide, because so much of what I think our leadership group has gone through in the last week, conversations and priorities, is we're going to be better because we're going to name and rank our priorities. We're going to do this, be 10 times as clear about your priorities, because I just assumed everybody thought like I did. We need to figure out where your group aims for efficiency and where it aims for creativity. We've already talked a little bit about catchphrases. They're used, and everybody rolls their eyes, they're kind of corny, but it's what sticks with the organization when you're identifying priorities and rolling things out. These are the things that stick. What really matters, we need to focus on the matters that do not get caught up in the cluster of the noise, the distractions of just day-to-day stuff. Use artifacts. This is really what's important within our own departments. We need to display those. Diamond plate on the walls at the fire station, that's significant because fire engines have diamond plate. Those type of examples are things that are used within this section of the book. And then focus on bar setting behaviors. That's really translating, our values and our missions into concrete terms. It allows us to spotlight a single task and use it to define their identity, which then allows us to set the bar for that type of expectation. And I feel like we'll come up, Carrie or Jason, with something to challenge our leadership of bringing back from these ideas, from this book, and to have a further follow-up discussion, leadership in general versus the culture code. But that's really all I have. I just appreciate the time and the ability and your guys' patience with me. And I know I learned a lot, and I appreciate the participation and the input, and that's all I've got.
Thank you so much, Mark. You know, and that last slide of yours, that, you know, I myself have really done a lot of thinking about, you know, narrowing that focus on what I do and why I do it. And, you know, my dad and I, we bow hunt, and we've always shared this little saying between the two of us. And whatever we do, he always says, put the arrow where it will do the most good. And you know, a little bit about that. In bow hunting, you've only got one shot, you know, so make it count. And a lot of times in what we do, we spend the majority of our times focusing on things that we have no control over, or things that for whatever reason have just been handed down from one group to the next, or generation after generation, and we don't know why we do it, but we just continue to do it. And so we never really ask ourselves, why do we continue to do it when there's better ways, more productive ways? So thank you again, Mark, for that. And again, thank you everyone for your participation. Once again, mark on your calendars, October 7th will be a required attendance on cybersecurity. So pass the word to your management teams. Carrie, do you have anything else to add?
I do. Just one quick thing. We have our October training that Jason was just talking about for our supervisors, but we also have our Build a Better Orem training in October as well. We will be looking for about 10 to 12 of you to be part of a panel for this, and we'll be talking about what you're looking for in a good employee. So if you have anything you'd like to share with us or would like to be part of the panel, I would like to get a wide variety of people. So please just shoot me an email if you're interested in being part of that panel. The Build a Better Orem is for all city employees, full-time, part-time, flex, seasonal. So all employees have the opportunity to join this session. So I think it's a great time for you to share with them your experiences and what you're looking for in good employees. So just shoot me an email if you're interested in being part of that panel. And appreciate all of your participation. And Chief Sanderson, you did a phenomenal job. Appreciate you doing this for the past 3 months. And I know I've learned a lot, and I know that you have as well. So with that, thank you all. Have a great day.
Thanks, Carrie.
Thanks, everybody.